But the concept is that photographers in general will do anything in their power to not have to do the work in the direction that they need to do the work in order to make their images better. That's a very harsh thing to say. It's a very harsh thing to accept. But it's the reality of the situation. How much experimentation time are you leaving in your editing process? As part of a service I provide for my subscription website, f64elite.com, I've critiqued over 3,000 photographs. And in that time, I've learned a lot of lessons about how people process. After you've critiqued that many images, you can find some parallels through the patterns that you see from edit to edit, from person to person. So what I want to share with you are 3 things that I think photographers are doing incorrectly, that when you pay attention to them, you can make your work infinitely better. And sometimes it just means being aware of these 3 things. The first thing, and this one is the biggest one, thinking that you're stuck with whatever your camera gives you. Now, I know that people know that they can push and pull their images. I know that. But a lot of times people don't realize that they can change the entire tonal profile of their image and get something so uniquely better than what they receive from their camera if they just knew where to look and how to look. And this comes from understanding that you need to adopt a viewer-focused workflow and not a "this is what my camera gave me" focused workflow. This is a shot from Hidden Lake at Glacier National Park. And you can see that, it wasn't this dark outside, but it was pretty gloomy. I had to underexpose my photo quite a bit. But what I'll tell you is that there's quite a bit of light that exists in this photo. And right now what I want to show you is that what the viewer is looking at is primarily only the sky. And how I know that is by a concept I've been working with called tone clustering, where you actually look at the tonal presence of the image and you can see where the viewer is seeing based on what is in the areas of white. So in that example, the only place that the viewer is looking is in the sky because what's happening in the foreground is not important to them. And you might think, that's obvious, Blake, but how many images have I critiqued where I see profiles that look similar to this? Or maybe there's just a little bit of middle gray in the foreground area where the viewer's eye should be looking. This is the final processed version of that horrible straight out of camera shot. Now, if we look at the tonal profile of this, look at this. We are drawing the viewer's eye into all the areas of highest highlight, making a connection between the sky and the foreground. Just look at this transition. It's so much better. You see, the data was there, but the light wasn't in the right place. So in the editing process, we are the ones that are responsible for placing the light where it is. The viewer should not have to look at that straight out of camera shot and be like, "Oh wow, this is amazing. You've made nothing amazing for me to look at." So we have to know and understand that we have the capability of flexing that image so that we can get the viewer to look exactly where we want. Here's another example of this. This is not a straight out of camera. This is a basic edit. This would be what I would consider most people would probably be happy with. A basic edit. Now this edit doesn't take into consideration where we want the viewer to look. It just edits the image and says, "Oh, that's nice." So if we look at the tone clustering profile, the only place that our eye is going is that first waterfall. Now in my opinion, this image could be much stronger if we make a connection between all 3 of the areas where water is falling in this image and not just the one. So when I edited this, with the final edit, I really wanted to pull the eye right into this area. So yes, we're gonna have some strength here because this is really bright, but we can still have the viewer's eye get pulled back into this space. If we look at the tonal profile of this, you can see that we clearly have the eye going back into this space here too. Now the basic edit fails there, but watch this transition. Now which one would you rather look at as a viewer? This one or this one? One where the photographer had your best interest in mind so that you, the viewer, wouldn't have to go searching for that area of importance in the image. As a photographer, you might say, well, I wanted it to be the other way because, I want them to have to look at my image long enough to be able to find that. Well, here's the sad truth, folks. People aren't going to look at your image that long if you don't make a connection with them immediately. A lot of the problems that I see in people's imagery is not making a connection with the viewer and just processing for their own needs. And yes, you can do that. But when you process for your own needs, and you start incorporating the viewer into it, you're gonna have a much, much better image with much more success. I guarantee people will start connecting with it even more. Here's another fun example of this. This is just a macro I took just outside of my garden. And look at this little aphid is just like about to go boop to this giant caterpillar. But this looks soft and it looks delicate and it looks like there's no danger for this guy. I needed to process this image in a way that would communicate to the viewer, whoa, there could be something here that is dangerous. The original, the more dangerous version, yet still on the soft side, has this playful, what happens if I poke this giant caterpillar? Versus, oh, we're two friends hanging out together. So as you saw here, we had 3 different images, all processed with this viewer navigation concept in mind. The second thing that I see is that photographers sometimes fail to accept the fact that every technique that you learn can be used on any genre of image. Okay, let me repeat that. Any technique that you learn can be used on any genre of image. I can't tell you how many times I put out a YouTube video or a video to my F64 Elite members, and I get emails that say, well, that's great, Blake, you did that on a landscape. How would that look on a portrait? Well, that concept leads me to number 3, but I'm not going to go into number 3 yet because I want to dive into this a little bit more. The thing is, anything that you learn, you can adapt to any genre of photography, especially if you're working in a viewer-focused mindset rather than, I'll just edit this however I want. I would say that from what I've learned, about 98% of photographers are just processing how they feel like processing, and they aren't processing for their end goal in mind. And that end goal being, what is your vision for the image, and how do you make that vision connect with the viewer? Okay, now this isn't a matter of turning every image into a story, because I don't believe every image can tell a story. But I do believe that your vision can be infused into every single one of your images. That I believe is a fact. So let's take a look at this image. For example, yes, this is an AI generated image, but the concept still stands. I used a viewer focused editing technique to get this image to this point. So if we look at the before and we look at the after, they might not look that different, but let's look at their tone clustering differences. You see, the image on the left has nothing that is really pure white, except for maybe the earring that is in that blurry area, but we don't want that. We want the viewer's focus to go right to the face of our subject. Because as we read this image and you see light on that face, that is where the viewer's eye is going. So now if you look at the difference between these two, you can clearly see that the image on the right is stronger favored to our eye than the image on the left. Because we're looking at the tonal quality of it and we're getting the viewer to look where we want them to look. Now, this tonal profile here, that doesn't mean that those areas are the whitest white areas. That means that in the relationship to all the other tonal properties in the image, that is the brightest area. We'll typically go to these 3 areas as a viewer, not in any particular order, but what's in focus, what's in the area of highlight, and what has the most color. So if we have the focus on the face of this subject, as we have here, because that is what is in focus, and that also tends to be the area that has the most color, and that also tends to be the area that is the brightest, guess what? You've just sucked your viewer right into that space. And these techniques that I use on this image are no different than the techniques that I would use on a landscape image. The panels that I use to create this stuff, the actions that I use, the stuff that I teach you on YouTube, you can use every single thing that I teach you on whatever genre you want, so long as you change your way of thinking to item number 1. You are not stuck with the light that the camera gives you. You can add light to your image and change the tonal path, which will change the focus of the viewer. So how do you get to that point? Well, that leads me to my last point on this. You've got to make time for experimentation. What I've found is that photographers are just part of this convenience-based society that we have. That's, okay, if I get this preset and snap my fingers, this is going to happen. Or if I tap into AI and have AI do this for me, then this is going to happen. Or if I get this new lens or this new camera or this new thing, you fill that in with whatever you want. But the concept is that photographers in general will do anything in their power to not have to do the work in the direction that they need to do the work in order to make their images better. That's a very harsh thing to say. It's a very harsh thing to accept. But it's the reality of the situation. How much experimentation time are you leaving in your editing process? Do you allow yourself 10 to 15 minutes to experiment with a technique that you've never tried before to see if it's going to work out for you on the image that you're working on? Probably not. Now, I do a ton of experimenting in this office. A ton. I've probably done more bad things to images than you've ever seen good things. But the idea is that I got to the point of those good techniques because of all of the bad experiments that I did. During this 30 days, 30 critique sessions that I'm doing, on day 8, we put a gradient on there. Now, the reason why I put a gradient on there was because someone challenged me to put a gradient on there. So I put a gradient map on there with 5 stops of color on it. It looked hideous, but when we experimented with that a little bit, we changed the blend mode, we dropped the fill down to about 15%, and we started to watch that ugly color grade that we did turn into something beautiful that added some life, some color, and some light to a subject that, quite frankly, needed it Now, if I wasn't forced to experiment with that, as I was in image number 8, would I have ever seen that? Probably not. Would I have ever put that technique in my back pocket to say, Blake, you might want to try that again? Probably not. Would you, if you saw that video, have thought, maybe I should look into gradient maps a little bit more? Probably not. So what are you doing wrong? It's not a shooting technique thing, okay? It's not a processing thing. This is all mindset. It's all what's happening up here. What are you thinking about when you edit? Are you thinking about your viewer? Think about your viewer. It will change the way you edit. Are you thinking that some techniques can only be used on a portrait or only used on a landscape? That's not good. That's closed-minded thinking. Okay, you got to stop that. And then 3, give yourself some time to experiment. Even if it is just 5 minutes during an editing process. It could be 5 to 10 minutes a month, but I guarantee you're going to benefit exponentially when you just allow yourself to play and let that play work its way into your workflow. So if you've watched this and said, man, I need to clean some stuff up, I know I do, okay? And I'm the one who did this video. Here on my YouTube channel, I'm doing something called 30 critique sessions for 30 days. Right now I'm at day 15, halfway mark. So if you click on the description, you'll find a playlist of all of those videos, and you'll also be able to find that playlist on the end screen as this video closes. At the end of the day, I just don't want you to be a closed-minded thinker, okay? I want you to open your mind, open your horizons, and think that maybe there is something I can learn outside of what I already know that can help my images make them exponentially better. And I want that for you.